and then we'll come back to you again in March to present the next round of prioritization of projects and receive your comment. And then in May, we go to the Planning Commission for general conformity findings with the general plan, and then we start our public hearing process. So with that, that's our brief update on the CIP process and what the CIP is, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned for the CIP that there were high priority projects, and then you listed them. And I was wondering, is there a prioritization in this group from gas to TIF, bike parks, etc.? Is there a hierarchy in that as well, or they're all equal?
We have specific funding for each of those fund groups that are only allowed to be used for specific types of projects. So we do a separate prioritization for each fund group. So for the traffic impact fees that we receive, we have a specific list of projects that, based on our 1995 traffic impact fee report, we plan to do. And we take our available revenue based on previous developer fees paid over the last few years and look at our highest priority traffic impact fee projects. In other words, we will look at which roadway is the highest priority for us to widen. A roadway that has a traffic capacity issue would be, of course, the one we would widen before one that is not yet a capacity issue. So we do a separate prioritization for each fund group. We don't mix them. So we do a prioritization for traffic impact fees, a separate prioritization for gas tax, and a separate one for each of the fund groups.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I was asking was for each of the categories, are they then ranked, or are they equal?
Categories.
Gas.
In that sense, they're equal.
In that sense, they're equal.
Yes.
Okay. And then, as far as the project closeouts, you had mentioned something about unused funds would be returned to be used for other projects. Is that often that we have unused funding?
We come back every year with unused funding and return it to the original fund for reprioritization. Some projects use almost all of their funds. Some projects don't use all of their funds because each project has contingencies built into it, and not every project uses the full amount of contingency. So that's why there's a variation in how much is returned back per project.
One thing I wanted to mention too, it's implied in the slide certainly that you presented, but the general fund is the fund of last resort and consideration with regard to using for capital improvement projects. For obvious reasons, it's the most precious money and that which is used for operations of basic city services like public safety and all. Going into, it's not unusual that we infuse general fund dollars into it if it's prudent, into the capital improvement program, that is, if it's prudent. The more austere the fiscal times are, the more unlikely you'll find general funds used.
How is public input factored into requests for funding? Or is it?
It's factored in through the public hearing process, and the public is welcome to attend any of these meetings and provide comment to the public or at the public hearing for staff and city council to consider.
What if there was a specific project, and could they lobby whatever category it belonged in to have that considered, or they were waiting to hear what staff has to say first and then ask for funding, or how does that work?
That'd be known as politics, I think. It's a political process. Yeah,
Okay.
and it is all of the above, and obviously they're free to lobby accordingly and come forward, and it's not unusual, obviously, to have a constituency around a particular capital improvement. Speed bumps was one that came to mind, although that was a defunded project we just didn't have the resources for. There are neighborhood improvements in and around schools, for instance, or streets that need to be repaved. They all have their constituencies. And Niles is living proof, for instance, because I hear it all the time as I walk the streets there. But I think what's compelling about staff's approach here is, as the engineers bring forward their recommendations, there is a methodology to it. And I think that's meant to be a benchmark for you to be able to make your decisions by prioritizing our issues with the precious resources we have and comparing those with other projects, so that when a neighborhood comes forward, you have that, I think, as a benchmark of basic information relative to how a particular project is prioritized and how it's competing against other projects for those dollars. And then, of course, the council and the mayor are paid the big bucks to make the political decisions to either override that process or stick to the methodology. So, and I've seen both approaches work over the years.
We had the CIP was kind of a grab bag, and one of the things that the council learned the hard way over the years is, and I think it's very clever the way we set these things into 2- and 3-year priorities, because they can do their work and they can plan for all of these things. It has happened where a group will come in and lobby a particular project, and the council said, okay, we're going to change that. Well, what that does is set off a flurry, because here comes the next group, or the one that got changed. Well, wait a minute, we want, so you end up in about a 6-month dogfight is what you end up in, and then ultimately you reprioritize and get back to business. So it's important to, when we're doing a priority, it's important to, hopefully get it right the first time and make it, I mean, it's publicized and so forth, so everybody gets that chance to get their nickel's worth in the first time around. So.
Well, being the new kid on the block, if I was approached by someone who said, hey, we would like this to happen, I'm not sure exactly how to direct them, other than to say, well, there's the CIP that's going to be coming up pretty soon. Maybe you should talk to, and then fill in the blank.
Your first inquiry, it's always me, obviously, and or Jill Kaymak, or feel free to contact Norm, but the easiest point of access is certainly through me. I get the information, if you want some preliminary information back, to give feedback to whoever that constituent was. But I think what the mayor was saying, to go back to that, is interesting, because it's not that there isn't room for discretion, because there is, but more often than not, it's oftentimes the methodology is about protecting from the slippery slope, because there is security in that logic that's brought forward.
Well, particularly since in these austere times, and you looked at criteria, and we're looking at to protect health and safety, so maybe the painting of a light pole may not be as high priority as, but at least they would be heard. I guess that's the thing, is to have access to the process. Okay. Project viability. Has on here will the project generate operating or maintenance savings? So maintenance savings meaning it's the newest, greatest thing that won't break down, or what kind of criteria are you thinking about there?